Hi, this video is going to take you through the new project, Pop Art Photos. So the idea is we're going to be repeating a photo 9 times on a canvas or on an image. So I'm going to skip the part of finding a high quality image, but you want your subject to be a photo, okay? Not a cartoon or a drawing or anything. We're going to try to work with photos. So once you have it, very first thing we're going to do is we're going to crop the image. So in Pixlr E, you're going to go to Open Image, and you're going to get your photo. Now it should be saved in your Pop Art folder, and you should probably have it properly named, so you can identify it easily. Okay. So when we crop it, we're looking for something like a square. Already this image kind of seems like it's kind of squarish, but I'm going to get rid of some of the space on the side to make it even more of a square. So we're going to use the crop tool, and I'm just going to move the edges of that shape. Now if you want a perfect square, right now it's set to, the constraint is set to free. If you hit ratio, you're going to notice that the width and the height, those numbers are 1 and 1. So it's a 1-to-1 ratio, which means that the height and the width will remain the same. Okay? So if that works for you, you can just set it up as a square. For me, I want to get part of that hat, but I want to get really close. So you want this to be a nice close-up picture of your subject. When you're done, you hit apply. It's at this point I'm going to highly suggest that you save this image now. So you go to File, Save, and JPEG is great, Save As. So now we're going to save it in the same place as before, and we're going to save it right in here. But let's rename it so it doesn't get saved on top of it. So I'm going to call it Cropped. Now if you have a couple of pictures, you can name it more. So like if I have a couple of different pictures, if I just name it Cropped, you're not going to know what that is. But if I put a little more information on here, then I know that's the cropped version of it. Okay, now that you have the cropped version of it, and the idea is in case you want to go back to this picture and you want to crop it a little bit more, you can do that. Let me just set this up so we can see it proper. So if you wanted this picture to be cropped again, you still have it. And if you're ready to for the next step, you can just open up the cropped queen. Okay, so here we go. The next step after we do this is we're going to posterize this image. Now posterizing is to eliminate all those hundreds of different tonal values, all those different colors. We're going to simplify this image so it kind of looks more like a print. So to do that, you're going to go to Adjustment. There's 2 ways that I'm going to show you. One way is you go to Adjustment and you select Posterize. It's at this point you're going to see a bar that says Colors. If you start dragging the bar over, if it's really high, you have a lot of colors, and then if you start bringing the number down, you can see it starts limiting the amount of colors and tones. So the magic number I want you to look for, I'll give you a couple. You could do 1, 2, or even 3. Okay. Now you might say you don't like the way this looks because you don't like the distribution of the different lights and darks. You'd like to modify this picture a little bit. So if it looks too light over here and too much contrast, we can modify this a little bit more. So another thing you could do, you can go to Adjustment, and instead of going down to Posterize, go up to Levels. So this is a new window, and if you're a graphic designer, you'll know what all of these things are all about. But we're just going to kind of simplify this a bit because this is one of the first projects. And I want you to look at these 3 little arrows underneath this map here. So as I drag those little arrows to the left and right, you can see the color or the tone changes. So if you want this to be a little darker, or a little lighter, you can make the adjustments. You can even posterize it from here. You bring these little pointers, and they're known as stops. We're going to see those again in a little while. You bring the stops closer together and you can see that it's starting to look a lot like the posterized image. But if you bring them over to the right a little bit, it darkens up everything. And if you bring it over to the left, these three clustered together, you'll see that it starts to get lighter. So you have a little bit of adjustments you can make. Now you can also adjust it, like starting to adjust it. Let's say I want the whole thing to be a little bit darker. I can leave it like that. That's what it was, that's what it is. I can apply that, then go back to adjustment and posterize. And you'll see that it should look a bit different. Okay? Now I'm going to undo my changes and I'm going to do one last one. You can go to adjustments, and instead of posterize or levels, you can go to curves. It handles it differently. We're not going to talk about these. I'm just looking at this line right here. We're going to make it into a curve that's going to be more upright, like vertical. So we're going to add, it says double click to add or remove a control point. We're going to add two. We're going to put one down here and we're going to put one up here, and I'm just double clicking. Move this line in the center more vertical and you can see it's contrasting, just like how we did with levels. If we move it more to the left, it gets lighter. If we move the vertical line over to the right more, it gets darker. So again, you can do the whole thing that way, or if you want to do it in two steps where then you go to colorize, you can do that. So I think I'm going to leave it like this. Okay? So right now I have only a few colors, not the unlimited colors. I have a red, yellow, an orange, a pink, a lighter pink, a white, a black, and that's just fine. So once you make this posterized like this, we are now going to go ahead and save it again. This time, same thing, JPEG. This one we're going to call posterized. Queen Elizabeth II. Okay, so you have three different versions of the same picture. You have the regular one that you got off the internet, then you have the cropped one, then you have the one that's posterized. And the reason why we keep this one saved is that imagine if you open it up the next day and you're saying you don't really like the way you posterized it, you want to work with it again, at least you have the cropped one so you don't have to worry about cropping it again. You can open this one and reposterize. Okay. It's at this point, once you have it posterized, that you're going to explore the various ways that you can take, you can change the color, and you can do some color variations. So you have this saved. You can go to, everything seems to be in adjustments. The easy way is to go to hue saturation, adjustment, hue saturation. And if you drag the hue back and forth, you can see that the colors will change hue. But as those reds change, so will the colors that were up here. The pink and the blues and stuff, everything will change differently. So let's say that you say you really like this green, but you don't like this blue in here. You know, there's ways that you can work around that. So hue saturation is limited because it's going to change every single color. All right. So you can also, if you want this to all be one color, like monochromatic, you can hit colorize. And you hit colorize and you can drag the hue around and it keeps them all the same color. So you could do some variations just using this. You could play around with the saturation, see what happens. And you can certainly use the colorized as a couple of variations. Another way that you can adjust and do a variation of color instead of going to hue saturation is color lookup. Color lookup, it's a more complex window. You have these two stops that you saw before when we were in levels, and if you bring these together and you move them around, you can see it's using the black and white gradient with all the grays, and you can see it's applying it to the picture. If I switch places even, you can see it's applying those two colors. Now you have a bunch of presets, already existing gradients, so if you click on a different one, you have a bunch of different gradients. So if you start exploring, you might find some nice variations here. But you can change the presets by moving around these stops. You can switch places. So you just want a nice variation. If you want to add stops or take away stops, you can do that as well. Let's say you just want to keep the red and the purple, but you want to get rid of this one. Click on it, remove stop. You can add stops by putting your cursor on at the bottom here, and you can see that here you added a stop. You can change the color of these stops. Right now I have two red ones. Let's say I want this one to be white. I can click on it and go over here and click, and then I will pick a color. So if I wanted white, there you go. So you can do that with any stop. You just want to make sure that you have the proper one selected. If I wanted to change the red, click on the red, then select the square. Okay? So hopefully that gives you enough to think about. You're going to be creating a bunch of variations, and to start, you can just kind of play around and experiment with color lookup and hue saturation. Okay, but make sure that you posterize your image first.